This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader.
Wrong one. Welcome, everybody. We are the Fantasy Empire. And we have a great show for you today. All right, Chris, this was your show originally, so tell us a little bit about the Fantasy Empire for those who don't know, and let's get our other hosts in here.
Absolutely. Dan, looking forward to this show, no doubt about it. It's got some history. We started last year with my guy, Nando DeFino, but in the off season, Dan, I completed a blockbuster 3-for-1 trade with Fantasy Life, and I shipped Nando out. He was getting a little gray in the beard. I moved him out for draft picks and some cash considerations, and acquired the services of 3 heavy hitters, yourself, my boy Matty Modica, and my other guy Nelson Sousa. 3 big shots and heavy hitters in the high stakes world, and I'm hoping that this season you guys all stick with us, and we provide as much info for everyone, who to start and sit, what we're seeing on the field and in the games every Sunday. So I'm looking forward to the show a lot, Dan.
Yeah, me too. This is going to be a lot of fun. I think, this kind of marries some of the best aspects of the old Fantasy Empire and the old GOAT District for those who are interested in the blast from the past as well. So we always loved having you guys on the GOAT District. You were favorite guests, everybody who's on the show. So I'm just happy to be able to talk with you guys every week. And I think that's I think it's going to be great for us too. I mean, I think we're all going to, as scary as that might be, I think that might make us all better players as well. So
iron sharpens iron. Yep. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron, Dan.
Definitely. All right. So Chris, why don't you introduce us to Matt? I'll bring him on here.
Yeah, heavy hitter here. Matty Mo plays high stakes baseball and football. He's in those FFPC and NFFC streets on a nightly basis. He's gotten the job done in both formats, and I love talking strategy with him come football season every year. So, Matty Mo, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, I'm just stoked to be with this crew. Can't wait to just hit the ground running. I've been drafting since the middle of June, FFPC, NFFC, like Chris said, and I think we're going to bring just a great show for everyone. We're going to talk high stakes. That's what I want to talk, and I think this is going to be really fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And then we also have one Nelson Sousa, who almost needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. Nelson has won the FFPC main event. He's won a couple of NFFC Platinum, so that's with a $20K entry fee. He's gotten second in the 2022 NFFC Primetime, plus numerous other wins. I mean, we're talking a guy. We're not going to disclose actual winnings because the IRS could be listening at any time. But he's well up there. Let's call it 7 figures for sure, and you can make your own guesses from there. But Nelson Sousa, and also he is the high stakes analyst at FTN Fantasy, and I want to let him talk a little bit about that and what he's got going on over there.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. I got to be honest, I was actually honored to have, Chris and Theo reach out to me about doing this podcast. I had my own podcast, going last year, and it was unfortunate we had to discontinue. But I was super thrilled to be joining you guys and start doing this podcast. I love talking football. So I think this is going to be fun, kind of like a round table of sorts, talking about, things that are going on in drafts right now and stuff like that. And then over at FTN Fantasy, I've been there now for a few years, and I've got my high stakes package. So it's a premium subscription, and you get access to my rankings, my fade list, a few other articles, and it's the best part of it that I'm getting good feedback on is the Discord chat, which is basically 24/7 access to me to ask questions as you're getting ready for your draft, through your drafts, into the season, talk about lineups, trades, and free agent pickups. So if anyone's possibly interested in that, go there, check it out, and you can always hit me up and DM me if you guys got questions.
Yeah, definitely. It's well worth it. I can speak from experience, and the Discord is fabulous. It's there's a lot of really, really sharp guys in the Discord too. So it's not even just Nelson. You've got a bunch of other people who really are knowledgeable and are talking strategy and everything else. So it's a great place to hang out. So definitely encourage anybody who's even thinking about it, go check it out. Hit up Nelson, whatever you need to do, but worthwhile for sure. All right. So for this show, since this is show number 1, we're going to talk a little bit about what we are going to do here and what we aren't going to do here. And, first and foremost, this is going to be laser focused on redraft high stakes leagues. That's not to say that you can't use it for your own leagues that are, lower stakes or whatever. But that's what our focus is going to be, because that's where I think a lot of the sharpest players are playing right now. We're going to be talking standalone leagues. We're going to be talking contest leagues, because sometimes the strategy is different. And we're going to really work to give you actionable information on a weekly basis, because your time is valuable. If you're going to spend an hour with us every week, we want it to be a valuable hour of your time as well. So we're gonna do everything we can to make it very actionable. It's gonna be real advice that we're all gonna be applying to our own teams too. So you're gonna see us out there doing it as well. And we just want to be the premium and best podcast available for high stakes players, so that it ain't even close. Couple things to think about also. We're not going to tell you specifically what we're going to do in specific leagues. We're always going to do whatever is required for any specific league. And sometimes that means going against maybe our own advice that we give here on the show. But in general, the advice is right. It's just for this particular situation, maybe it won't matter. And also, we don't have crystal balls. Every one of these guys here has gotten plenty of things wrong, and they'll be the first ones to tell you. I know I've definitely gotten my share of things wrong. The idea is just to be a little bit more right than everybody else. And if you can do that, you're going to make money in this game. So appreciate everybody that's in here and listening right now. And we're going to take just a real quick second, play a little ad, and then off we go with the show.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly, especially now. It's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the off season. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
All right, and we're back. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an NFFC board here. And I apologize, we're losing we're losing Nelson down there. We just got his eyes. So while we're talking, I'm going to work on fixing that. But anyway, this is
technical issue. First show, getting the kinks out in the first show here. Let's go.
That's right. So anyway, Nelson, why don't you tell us a little bit about this board? And
can we blow this up, Dan?
Yep. Let me see what I can do here. But tell us a little bit about this board. This was the first Primetime, right? Yep. Nelson.
Sorry, that was for me.
Yeah.
So this was the first live primetime board on Saturday night.
All right. And Chris, just give us a little bit of info about how this works. The primetime, scoring settings, all that kind of stuff for people who aren't familiar with it.
Yep. Dan, this is the NFFC Primetime, the main event, the premier contest that they offer. It's 12-team leagues, 20 rounds. So, just like in all high stakes here, we play deep rounds, 20 of them. And it is $1,000 fab budget. It is an overall $250,000 prize to the winner. And it's what we're all shooting for this year.
All right, great. So what we want to do is just kind of go through this board and look and see, which teams we like, constructions we like, all that kind of stuff. I apologize. I've got this about as big as I can get it, because if I get it any taller, then I start losing teams. So, Dan, last thing I forgot to mention, third round reversal for anybody that's listening that doesn't know in the NFFC. So at the end of the second round, we start off with Derrick Henry over there in pick 25. It's also 6-point passing touchdowns in the NFFC compared to some of the FFPC with 4-point passing leagues. So just wanted to get that out of the way before we break down this board. All right, sounds good. Okay, so Chris, why don't you lead us off and just kind of let us know what you think of this board, teams you like, teams you don't, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at this board, guys, the first thing that stood out to me is Team 12 and his approach there. I've said it on a couple other shows, but I think if you get that pick in the back end of the first round in that 11-12 range where a lot of people seem to not want to be drafting from this year, to me, if you're back there and you want to be back there, it's to get one of those three bell cows in Barkley, Gibbs, or Taylor. This particular drafter goes a different route, and he goes wide receiver heavy out of the corner. Now, I don't have a problem with that either, okay? I don't have a problem. This isn't about particular players that he picked. It's about the build. Now, he gets a little lucky because he just flips it, and he gets his RB1 out of the way in Derrick Henry. My problem is when he hits the third and fourth rounds in NFFC drafts right now, in the third and fourth round, if you're in that position, you got to come out of that turn with a wide receiver, if not two, okay? Because you're not drafting again until the fifth and sixth round when you drafted 72 and 73 after all, and everybody just wiped out the wide receiver pool, and you're lucky to hang on and get one more. This particular drafter comes back. He gets his third receiver in that sixth round, but it's already a hurt Marquise Brown that we might not see through September. So now he has a third receiver that's injured. And that's a major problem. And then he comes back with two more injured running backs that we won't see probably in September as well. So I don't really know what this drafter was thinking, not to pile on here, but I thought his draft stood out to me the most as a complete debacle, and I wouldn't play it in any particular way here. So we'll start off with the negative. I'll throw it to my guys that they could point out a couple positives and a couple positive builds they found.
I got a positive one here. I'll go with Team 9. I do like to start double wide. I'll start running back as well. But if you're picking from the 9 spot, getting Garrett Wilson and Olave, two guys I really like this year, pairing that up with Pacheco, you got your two twin tower wide receivers. You got your bell cow running back. I thought he was a bell cow for them. He might not be the most, aesthetically looking running back in the league, but he's on one of the best offenses, and he should get, the workload there. When you can get Josh Allen, whether it's in a 6-point passing league or even in the FFPC, you can get him late in the fourth round. I know we can wait this year, but sometimes, you don't wait, especially in the NFFC, where this guy scores 500 points every year. Even when they phased out Diggs in the second half, he was still putting up numbers without him. And he pairs that with Kincaid. I mean, I am not a Ridley guy. I probably would have went Reed there. And the reports out of here in Nashville, where I live, is Hopkins should be back for week 1, but I really can't argue with that pick. The thing I found interesting was the Pollard and Spears combination, which, it's definitely a different way of doing it. I personally would have went Javonte over Pollard there, but I get that. He continued to build the Bill stack, the right pick, nice upside, but the steal of the draft, for me, and it's somebody we'll talk about later on, is Tyson Hill in the 14th. I think that was a fantastic pick, and then he caps it off late with the guy I call Javon New England Neighbors Baker. So that's my breakdown on Team 9.
Nice. Okay. And, I kind of looked at all these teams and I came away with kind of the same thoughts as what Chris did about Team 12. I mean, it was not put together very well, just because of the fact that, you start off with a couple wide receivers and then you only get one more wide receiver until, like round 12. That's just difficult in the format where you've got to start 3 wide receivers every week, and then again, the hurt running backs, all that kind of stuff. So Team 12 was definitely not my favorite. I thought the best ones structurally were teams 1, 2, 4, and 9. I thought all of those did a great job structurally. Team 1, you see him lead off with a running back. He gets 3 wide receivers, comes back with another good running back. I mean, everything just kind of falls into place on this team. You can see how this team comes together. It all fits very well. Same thing with Team 2. They start off with the 3 running backs, and then, they add a 4th running back in the 5th round, sandwiched by a couple of running backs. They got a nice quarterback. They got a couple of good options at tight end. It's a team that was filled out pretty nicely early on in the draft. Team 4, you get Bijan to start with, and then gets right into the wide receivers, gets Patrick Mahomes, which is great with a 6-point TD pass league. And then you got Andrews right back to a couple more receivers. So he doesn't hit running back again until round 8. And, he comes back still with getting Najee Harris. And, the rest of his running back room a little bit weak, but he's got 2 guys he can rely on to start with and figure it out from there. And then Team 9, I think,
especially when you can pick off this year an elite quarterback and tight end in the middle of those rounds.
Right, exactly. So that was a great job. And then Team 9, I think, I thought it was a good job there. The team matches well together. I don't mind the Pollard Spears combo, the same thing that Team 7 did with Brown and Moss. I think in these kind of leagues, you can do that because it could seesaw back and forth a little bit throughout the season. So having both of those options there isn't the worst thing in the world. So I like that team as well. Very well structurally put together, as Matt already said. All right, and Nelson, why don't you wrap it up and you can do the big reveal. Which team was yours?
Sure. I think for the first live main event, I think that for the most part, there was not, except for outside of Team 12, which we already pointed out, I think the rest of the teams did a pretty good job of drafting. Sometimes you get into a league and it's usually like 2 or 3 teams that end up doing kind of a poor job drafting. But overall, it was pretty solid. I like the type of build, like Team 1, Team 2 is kind of like the type of build that I like. And even Team 7, where, he was aggressive, more of a 0 running back approach. And before he takes his first running back, he takes his 5th wide receiver. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because that just kind of makes that the strength and the core of the team, assuming that, all his wide receivers, that he took in the first few rounds hit. So that's kind of like the approach that I prefer. And it's what I've had the last 2 years. It's what I've had the most success with is kind of drafting wide receiver heavy and, leaving the early running backs alone. But I do think that there's, you got the 3 guys at the top, right? You got McCaffrey, Breece, Bijan. I think those guys definitely have the potential to be really good in fantasy this year. And the only other guy that I think could be good, but it's going to take a Montgomery injury, is Gibbs. He's the other guy that could possibly break fantasy. Otherwise, I just think those other running backs are good, but I prefer the wide receiver over those other guys. And then I don't know if you guys have anything to offer with that.
I just want to point, I liked a lot of the teams that Dan and you guys all agreed with there. I think if you draft running back out of the one hole, I don't care who it is, if you're a McCaffrey guy, a Hall, a Bijan, I think it's a necessity this year to go 3 wide after and build off of that bell cow. And this particular drafter saw that and agreed. He went 3 wide right after that. I would have added my 4th receiver, either switched out my RB2 where he took Connor or passed on quarterback out of that one hole. I think you could still get a solid quarterback on the turn at 84, 85 this year, in that 8th, 9th round. So I would have tried to snag my 4th receiver there. I do love Team 2's build as well, knowing that you could get that 4th receiver late in the 5th round, and he does that with Godwin. Liked all his build. And the same thing with Team 4. Like I said, this year, if you get presented an elite quarterback or elite tight end in that middle of the 4th round, I see a lot of drafters jumping on that just because of that extra depth in that 5th and 6th round this year at the wide receiver range. You can snag an elite quarterback or tight end and come back and still fill out your wide receiver room. So, and that's based on building off of a bell cow like Team 4 did with Bijan. So those 3 teams stood out to me as well.
Awesome. And then Nelson, why don't you let us know which team was yours?
I was Team 9. So all you guys mentioned Team 9. So that makes me feel good. My strategy going in, usually, the first couple of main events, I just go with the flow. But in this particular draft, I've made a note that, again, the running backs in the 2nd, 3rd round, I tend to shy away and draft wide receiver over them. But I wanted to make it a point to at least have a couple of Pacheco teams. And so he was kind of the guy that I identified that's going in the 3rd round that is the only running back that I would be semi-interested in. So in this particular draft, I just wanted to go ahead and just take him just to have a Pacheco team and then see, how the rest of the board was going to go.
Yeah, Nelson, and you executed what I was just talking about with Team 4. You come back with the elite quarterback and elite tight end. So do you see it the same way as I do in that 4th and 5th round where, I don't know if I could say lucky in your particular case here, because you come back with a Ridley and a Jackson Smith and Jigba in rounds 6 and 7 to complete your wide receiver room while still locking up your elite quarterback and tight end. So do you agree with that outlook? If it's presented to you this year in the NFFC to grab the elite at those one-off positions?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I actually think the 4th round in this particular format is the sweet spot for those 3 elite guys. And I think you have those 3 quarterbacks. That's not to say that, quarterbacks 4 through, 10 can't make a push towards being one of the top, QB1 in fantasy. But I think that, Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts have kind of separated themselves as like the elite guys. So I think that's the sweet spot to be able to get some exposure to those quarterbacks. And then, it's not for if you're not comfortable where you like having like that, clear RB2 and it makes you feel warm and fuzzy, then this particular build is probably not for you. But I like getting one of those tight ends that I think is every week they're going to be part of their offense. They're going to get targets every week. I'm a big believer in that because, again, you leave your draft, if you push tight end back this year, it looks like, there's plenty of depth at tight end. But all it's going to take is week 1 for your tight end to go 1 catch for 3 yards, and, put up a nice 1.3. And then you're like, oh shit, my tight end room doesn't look as good as I originally thought. So, and that happens. That's why those tight ends are going where they are, in the later rounds. If you push it back too far, I believe in getting good tight end play, good quarterback play, especially if like one of those guys, have like an elite season. I think you have an edge at that point.
Yeah,
definitely. So let's talk before we take down this draft board and move on to other things. Let's talk real quick about one interesting thing with the NFFC is you get to pick your draft spot, sort of, or at least you get to decide what order you'd like your choices in. So in other words, if you want to have one of the first 4 choices or whatever, you can put down 1, 2, 3, and 4 as your first 4 choices. If you are interested in being in the back of the first round, you could put down 10, 11, 12 as being your first 3 choices. And then the software will go through and it will give everybody a choice order, which will then decide which of your picks is going to be the one that you actually get. So you get to, you get some control, not total control, but if you happen to have an early choice order, then it works for you and you will probably get one of your prime positions. So, you get a little bit of choice in this draft. And I just want to hear what Nelson's doing right now, as far as which draft spots he's prioritizing and anything he likes, dislikes, all that.
Yeah. So the 1 through 10 is what I've identified as the players that are going there inside the 1 through 10 are guys that I want to get exposure to. So I'm totally fine drafting from the 1 hole. I'm totally fine drafting in the 10 hole. I think there's a drop off after that. And I think you can make it work, but I want one of those receivers or one of those top running backs in the first round.
Totally makes sense. All right, Matt, what's your strategy on KDS?
I pretty much agree with Nelson on the 1 to 10, like that top 10. But for me, just being specific, if I want one of the big 3, I'm going to try and get number 5. And if I want a receiver, I'm totally happy with number 9. Most likely worst case scenario, it's Garrett Wilson for me, who I am a huge fan of. And maybe one of the other studs fall, as we've seen Jamar Chase fall to 9. I know people are worried about Justin Jefferson with the quarterback situation. So those would be the 2 routes that I would tend to attack, most likely, depending upon the position I want to start with.
Okay. And, for myself, I pretty much like the top 9, maybe 10 as well. I think if you're only doing a couple of these, you probably want to prioritize those first 4 or 5 picks so you can get that premium player in there, just realizing that it's going to cost you a little bit in the 3rd round, but you'll make it up in the 4th round. So it's fine. And I think some of the most fun zone is kind of in that 5, 6, 7 range. I've really enjoyed drafting from there because you are, you don't have to reach quite as much as you do when you're on the end of the snake. That you can let the draft come to you a little bit, but also you get a lot of fun players in there in the first 3 rounds or so. And you get that option of, when in the 4th round, like we were talking about, you get one of those big 3 quarterbacks falling to you. You can take advantage of that. You get one of those big tight ends falling to you in the 5th. You can take advantage of that. So, there are just some things I think you can take advantage of a little bit more in the middle than you can at the end. 11 and 12. Yeah, I'm not too happy when I get spot 11 or 12 for sure. And Chris, how about you?
Yeah, Dan, for the last 2 months, I've tried to get the top 4 picks as much as possible. I was comfortable in that range. What I've noticed is as the board has changed a little bit these last 2 weeks, I'm not in love with the end of the 2nd round. I'm not in love with the options that dry up in the middle of the 3rd and land in the late 3rd at the turn. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to move myself into the middle of the 1st round as much as possible in that 5 to 7 range, 5 to 8 range. I agree. It helps you. You're getting a stud, in the middle there in the 1st. you're in a comfortable spot where you're clipping another, elite guy that I see there's a little bit of a tier drop off from that mid to second to the end of the second guy. You're clipping one of them, and then you're coming back and you're landing in the middle of the third before it dries up again. So, and then you have, any option you want in the middle of the fourth. You can get one of these, solid running backs before that tier drops off. You could go right back to the wide receiver position, or you could go elite quarterback or elite tight end. So the middle is where I'm comfortable. Not to say that I'm not liking the end of the first round in that 10, 11, 12 spot, but I think it's a different style of drafting if you're back there. So right now, middle of the first is the happy place.
Yep, like that a lot. And all you out there listening, again, please, we really appreciate your likes. If you can give this broadcast a quick like, if you want to follow the Player Profiler YouTube channel, I think that's great too, so that you don't miss any of these shows. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to some of our biggest movers in ADP. We've looked at and identified between us 6 players that have moved a good bit in ADP over the past couple of weeks. And we just kind of want to talk about where they're at right now and are we buying into them or not. We're going to make this really quick. So, again, just quick hitters, guys. Do you like the ADP? Would you want to continue buying at this ADP, or is it getting overblown, a little too hot for you? So we're going to start with Rashee Rice, who is currently ADP of 42, wide receiver 25 on the NFFC. And so, Chris, start us off.
Rashee Rice, skyrocketing up into that third round. I saw him in the middle of the third round. I don't want to pay that price. I'd like to get him at the turn, or definitely in the fourth round. So that's where I stand on Rice. I'm not completely out. Someone had to move into that end of the third round that's appealing at the wide receiver range. It looks like it's going to be Rashee Rice, here to stay. And, I would just like to get a little more extra spots on him and make him my wide receiver 3 in the fourth round.
Yep, totally makes sense. Okay, Matt?
I am in. I think, I believe it was the first slow draft. I got him at like 410. I think the suspension has suppressed them all off season. Again, I think the Chiefs will be one of the best offenses. I think Mahomes is looking to get back to putting up Pat Mahomes numbers this season. And I think he belongs in that late third round. I mean, there's some guys I would take over him. I would take Pittman, DK, and Moore. I would take Rice over those 3 and put him there. I think he's KC's number 1 wide receiver going in.
All right. Yeah. I think he's in a fair range here. I wouldn't want to see him rise much higher. And like Chris, I'm definitely more looking to scoop the discounts when he falls into the fourth rather than, have to buy in the third. But, to me, the biggest thing that's changed with Rashee Rice is I think he's going to have a lot stiffer competition for the ball this year. Xavier Worthy, I think, is the real deal. We'll talk about him soon. And also, Hollywood Brown, once he's healthy, I think is going to be a pretty solid player as well. So there's just more competition for the ball. And Nelson, what do you think?
I think somewhere along the way this draft season, I'm going to find a spot for him to just get some exposure. But he seems pretty locked in where he's going, and I'm not as bullish on him as Matt. So I know I'm not going to have much of him. So it's just finding the right spot where I can take him in a draft. But, I just look at it as last year he had no target competition. And I think with Hollywood and Worthy, I think those are legit receivers and talents that, they manufacture targets for Rice, and they were doing that a lot last season. I just wonder if that's going to hold up as we get into the season. So, although I'm making a case of, to be negative on him, I do like him. I like the offense. I also look at it from the standpoint of identify offenses that you want a piece of, right? There's certain offenses that are explosive, and I think Kansas City is one of them. So you want to get a little bit of a piece of of that offense as much as you can, because, short of a Mahomes injury, they're going to be very good. So I'll find the right price for him. But right now, I think, if he's going to go, middle to late third round, it's going to be a tough price for me to invest in.
Yeah, so rewind about a minute, and guys, and stick a pin in what Nelson was just saying there, because I think it's really, really important. I just want to highlight that it's dangerous to fade players who have been successful in the past on good offenses, no matter what you happen to think of their current situation or their current price. Those are the guys who can, I think, actually hurt you when you fade them completely. So I'm in the same place as Nelson is. I've got very little Rice, and I'm trying to find a way to get him in there, but it's been tough. But I'm just going to have to find ways to jam him in. All right, let's move on to Xavier Worthy, Rice's teammate, ADP of 70, and so he's going kind of in the the late 6th round, and he's wide receiver 38. This is a player that I've been very bullish on since basically he declared. I thought that he is a fantastic prospect. I think he went to the exact right spot. I know he's super fast, and we've all been burned by fast wide receivers who were drafted in the 1st round. But the thing is, even after he ran that speed, it didn't really affect where he was expected to go. He was expected to be probably a late 1st round pick before he ran the super fast 40, and now he's still a late 1st round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs, which is like the prime landing spot. So I've been all in on Xavier Worthy. I've been getting my bags all season, off season long, basically, because I feel like his price is probably going to continue to rise. And so I just want to make sure, that I've got all that I need before that happens. Matt, what are your thoughts?
I'm all in on him as well. Again, with the Chiefs, the thing with Rashee Rice last year, just to go back 1 second and to tie it in with Worthy, they basically had him run one route to focus on when he was a rookie. And there was an evolution. They brought him along slowly. From the beginning of camp with Xavier Worthy, he, as you said, with the time he posted, but he could run all the routes. They want him to run all the routes. Even when he was injured, he was by Matt Nagy's side, and they were going over it. Where should have you been on every play? Like I said, I started drafting in the middle of June. In 21 drafts of 350s, primetimes or main events, I have 21 shares of him, and only 3 are below the 7th round. So you were getting him 7th and 8th round. Again, this is an ascending offense. I think he's this year's Tank Dell. Hopefully he just stays healthy. And again, I'm very high on Rice. I'm very high on Worthy. I'm not really the Hollywood Brown guy even before he got injured. I think he's good. I think he'll have some spike weeks. Never stays healthy, and he has some inconsistencies. So I'm Rice and Worthy, and I'm all in.
Nice. How about you, Nelson?
Yeah, I'm in on Worthy, and part of my strategy with it is they play on Thursday night, and all my big money, high dollar drafts are after Thursday night. And I look at it as I want to get as much of that Kansas City team as I can pre-Thursday night, because if those guys go off in that game, it's going to make it very difficult, even in a confined league, which, you can throw ADP out the window in a confined league. Who cares? Where you were getting a guy 2 days ago, it's not a tournament style format, right? Confined. So, but if Worthy just goes off for like 2 long touchdowns, right, and he's like 140 yards or whatever, in those big leagues, he's probably going to go like 2nd round, and it's probably going to be a situation where I can't wrap my head around taking a guy like that just to bank the points. So I'm going to try to get as much exposure to him now in case he does go off. And then if he doesn't and he's quiet, I'm going to buy the dip in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's I think a great strategy. And Chris? What do you got?
Yeah, that's a good point with the opener. That obviously changes everything the couple days after the drafts with Worthy. For me, it comes down to a matter of like what Matt said. I mean, Matt's a Worthy over Hollywood Brown, guy. How does this Chiefs offense look? I don't think drafters are looking at it now when Hollywood is healthy. Just say Hollywood comes back in week 2, week 3. How does this offense change, and how does Worthy rank in the pecking order on a weekly basis? Is he a guy that's out there running 50-60% of the snaps? I don't see them putting Hollywood on the sideline, and it could rightfully be where it's Rice and Hollywood and Kelsey as the top 3. Now you want me to take the 4th guy in the pecking order in the 6th round or potentially higher, the way this guy is skyrocketing up the board, and potentially will, like Nelson said, after that Thursday opener, if he drops a 5 for 110 and a touchdown. There's other guys I like in that area. Worthy's definitely somebody that can burn me this year. Probably won't have many shares.
Can I just make one point about the Hollywood and Worthy thing? This is just like my take. As a Bills fan, as you can see, I lost my mind when they traded that pick to Kansas City. They didn't learn the lesson with Pat Mahomes years ago. They gave them that. They basically went out of their way to get this guy. It might take a little time, even if Hollywood came back week 1 and maybe he doesn't blow up that Thursday night. But I think in the long run, he has the possibility to be, one of their top receivers, as opposed to Hollywood's on a 1-year term. So that's my little argument there, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, Matt, but do you look at it a little differently if he's your wide receiver 3 compared to your flex play in 4, where you follow up maybe with a solid veteran receiver like right after that, and you could rotate your 4 and 5 where a guy like Worthy doesn't burn you if he's not in your every week lineup? I don't know if I could trust my 6th round, him as my 6th round pick as my wide receiver 3, that I have to force him into my weekly lineup and get burnt with some 2 for 22s,
I mean, most likely he's going to be he's going to either be my 3 or 4. And I'm going to be drafting. I like to be a piss boy where it's a lot of yellow. And I'm going to draft a lot of receivers, especially in the NFFC. You have to do that. I mean, there's running backs I love in the 3rd round. But if I start off with one of the big 3, I just really have a hard time pulling that trigger because you just fall behind. You can't make up. You can't take the quarterback value, the tight end value. You're just chasing wide receivers. So I'm really not worried about that because I'm going to have an excess of it. So I think it will work out for me in the long run. That's the bet I'm making.
Yeah, I think it was a good point Chris made that he does a lot better as your wide receiver 4 than wide receiver 3 if possible. And sometimes you can kind of arrange it so that your wide receiver 4 is a guy that you can count on. So even though you might have drafted Worthy your 3rd wide receiver, if you've got a 4th guy that you can really count on, he might be your wide receiver 3 and you're actually putting Worthy into the flex. The other thing I think that's interesting about this is that we have Hollywood Brown, who's probably going to be playing the X in this offense most often, which means he's going to be off on an island and probably drawing the top cover corner, which I think is going to help with Worthy as well. We know that Mahomes is a good distributor of the ball. We know that Worthy is very good at getting open. So, I think there are things to like here. You just have to be careful not to get, too over exuberant on Worthy, but definitely a guy I'm going to have a lot on my team. All right, let's move to Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is ADP of 20, wide receiver 13. Definitely steamed up a lot after the Puka Nacua injury. So, Matt, how are you handling Kupp? Are you interested at this price?
Yeah, no, I'm very interested. Maybe it's a little controversial, and I do love Puka. I think he's fantastic. I think he will have another solid season. But I would probably flip Kupp and Puka for me. When they were on the field together, they basically saw the same amount of targets. The target share was very similar. And Cooper Kupp in his career has proven to be an excellent red zone target. Many injuries. McVay came out and said, people don't know the pain he was going through last year and how he was able to, this offseason. So I'm looking at it where he's a guy that I want to be in on. It is a gamble with the age. The 31 is never something you're excited about taking, but he's not one of these lanky, tall, wide receiver guys. So, and just the chemistry that they have, I'm in. And I think they'll what happened last year after week 5, you saw a lot more running, but that was because they also lost Kupp. And, so I think they will pass the ball even more. I really like the Rams offense this year as well.
All right. And Nelson, where are you at on Kupp?
Yeah, Kupp with his age, usually I shy away from receivers once they start getting past north of 30. And it just comes down to, it's not that I'm super confident that they're going to fall off a cliff. It's just I'd rather be a year early than a year late. But I do think that Kupp never made a living with his speed. So he's a master, route runner. So we don't really need to worry about, him losing a step and that, hurting him. And I agree with what Matt said with him and Stafford having great chemistry. So he's going to be part of, he's in consideration in the second round. I'm not going to go out of my way. I'm not fading him. He's going to be a guy that, I'll take here and there.
Yeah, I think Nelson, that's pretty close to where I'm at on Kupp as well. I'm concerned about the age. I'm concerned about the injury history, but he's a guy that has proven that he can put up a ton of points. And as you said, he's not really relying on his speed. He's more relying on his route running ability, which those receivers tend to age a little bit more gracefully as long as they can stay healthy. So I'm definitely still in at this ADP, though it's starting to get to the point where I'm if it creeps up into the early part of the second round or something like that, I'm probably going to be out at that point. I'll try to get my shares in before that happens, and hopefully it doesn't. And let's see, Chris, how are you on Kupp?
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with what Nelson said. I'm usually fading a guy like this that's coming off a couple years of getting banged up, and he's on the wrong side of 30. So I was going to be out on Kupp. I was out on Kupp most of the summer. Started buying in now with all the good reports. I have some shares of him in the 4th round. Most of my shares are in the 3rd. Middle of the 2nd, there's other guys that right around there. If he comes to me, he'll be on my team. But I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very telling with Cooper Kupp. And if Puka Nacua comes back on this practice field and is 100%, and we get some reports of that coming up, I think Cooper Kupp's ADP is either going to go one way or the other here. If we see Puka and he's healthy, I think we start seeing Coop fall to the end of the 2nd round, maybe even early 3rd. And if Nacua stays out, we might see Cooper Kupp start sliding up into that early 2nd round.
Awesome. All right. Let's go next with Rome Odunze, ADP of 80, wide receiver 41. So he's definitely sliding into that 7th round. And Nelson, what are your thoughts on Odunze?
Yeah, so he's an interesting guy. So every time I finish a draft, I always go back to it and I review the draft board and I try to identify guys that I have low exposure to and then try to figure out why I'm not taking them. And Odunze is one guy that I identified that I had very little of. And I was having trouble, even though I had him my rankings for him were pretty fair, right along, ADP, but I was having trouble clicking on his name. And I've wrapped my head around it, and this is the way I look at it. Where Odunze goes, you're drafting him knowing that there's a good possibility he's the number 3 in that offense. Okay. Keenan Allen's going to command targets. DJ Moore is going to command targets. What I wasn't factoring in is this dude's a baller. Okay. I think that he's super, super talented. And the simple fact of what if Keenan Allen, and I know this is hypothetical, what if Keenan Allen gets hurt? He hasn't been a picture of, good health throughout his
career. Gets fat.
Yeah. He's fat, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
We're all struggling with that,
Matt. As me.
We're all struggling with that.
Or DJ Moore gets hurt, right? So when factoring that in, I actually think Odunze has the type of talent, and it seems like he's got this chemistry with Caleb already. And he could be like a real factor his rookie year. So I've now decided, like, I got to mix him in. I just got to find ways to just force him in and pick him, because if that happens, then I want to have teams with Odunze on it and not looking back and saying, shit, I just kept skipping him. So that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah. All right. Makes sense. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Nelson hit that one on the head as well. I wasn't going to be having a lot of shares of Rome. But then, I started thinking the same thing. Like, what if this Keenan Allen just hits the end of the road here? And then, Odunze's there every week as a top 2 receiver for the Bears, and I'm letting him slide by. So I started thinking about it, and I think I have to incorporate him into my plan. Sure, it looked better when you were getting him in the 8th round, but, you're probably going to have to pay a 6th round. And just like I said with Worthy, I think the strategy here is, if you could get a Odunze there in the 6th as your wide receiver 4, I'd want to come back with like a Cortland Sutton in the 7th or 8th round, that veteran receiver that if Odunze gets off to a slow start, Keenan stays healthy, you're getting those Odunze 3 for 38 weeks early in the season. Well, you know what? Let's put him on our bench. Let's bring in that veteran wide receiver that can, solidify my starting lineup. And, and hope that the second half of the season, a guy like Odunze steps up and is one of these rookie wide receivers that we see every year now blow up down the stretch and win fantasy titles for people. So Odunze's back in my fantasy plan, guys.
Nice. Yeah, I'm right there with you guys as well. I had way too little of them to start with, and then, my dynasty brain started overtaking me a little bit and saying, hey, we've got to get some Odunze here. He's just too good. And I think the key is, you just, if you're comfortable with your top 3 wide receivers, then Odunze is a potential late season hammer. So I think he fits very nicely with some builds, and those are the ones I'm going to try to work him into. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm like neutral here at this price. I agree you want to have exposure. Of course, he could be somebody, especially late in the season, that could blow up. As these guys are saying, you're seeing the chemistry in these couple of preseason. And you get one thing with preseason, certain teams, play it a lot differently than other teams. And you see it with the Bears. You saw it with their defense. They were blitzing and stuff. They really came to play against the Bengals and even to the Bills to a certain extent in game 1. So I'm kind of neutral here. I just didn't get how Ladd McConkey and even like a Hollywood Brown, I would rather have Odunze over both of those guys. Obviously, I'm not a big Hollywood Brown guy, so that could come back to make me eat a lot of crow at some point this season.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's move to a couple running backs. We'll start with Chase Brown, ADP of 89, running back 29. Chris, why don't you lead us off? What are you thinking on Brown?
Oh, Chase Brown. Hold your horses, Nelson. We're talking about Chase Brown over here, buddy.
I'll let you guys go first. I'm gonna go last.
Yeah. So Chase Brown, if you've noticed in the last 2 weeks, he was skyrocketing up the boards. You started seeing guys take him, in the early 70s as their RB2. What we've seen now in the last couple of weeks is him take a step back. I've got a couple shares of him at 96 and 99 overall in the last 10 days. So I don't know what's going on in the Chase Brown world. I don't know if it was an overreaction and the hype was crazy about 3-4 weeks ago, and now it's taken a step back. But if you give me Chase Brown in the 8th round as my RB3 in the post 85 overall range, I'm going to take him every time. I'm in on him at that price. It's a little tougher to pull the trigger on him in that early 70s where he was going a month ago.
All right. Sounds good. Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm in on Brown. My first slow 8 OC back in June, we got him at 10-1. As Chris said, the momentum has just been building. I'm with him as, I'm taking him over Zamir White. I'm going to go with him over Swift. I don't know if Swift, and I was a big Swift guy. I don't know if he's the best runner in that backfield. I still like Khalil Herbert, and we could go on there. So I'm willing to move him up to a certain point and pay the price for him. But as Chris said, there has been a bit of a pullback. So you know what? just enjoy and keep loading up over there.
All right. Yeah, Brown, I've been in on the Cincinnati backfield the whole time. And basically, I've been drafting since January. So, I've been going at this for a while. And I've just been taking whoever's been the cheapest option, which for a good long time was Brown. It became Moss for a while. And, now it's kind of seems like it's evened out a little bit more. So these are players I think we need to be in on. If the Cincinnati offense is good, one or both of them is going to be, I think, a great running back. You can get him as your RB3. You just got to take advantage of the fact that people just aren't sure of what's going on here, and that uncertainty is what's dropping the price down to a very reasonable price for either one of them, I think. Nelson, why don't you wrap it up for us?
Yeah, so I think the hype started obviously with you had some beat reporters saying, hey, he's running with the ones. He's getting passing down work in practice. Then you've got his offensive lineman, I think, said, hey, if I'm doing a draft, I'm taking Chase Brown. So that just created, a lot of hype around it. And I think a lot of fantasy analysts took note of it and, just talking out loud like, hey, wait a minute, maybe we have this wrong and we shouldn't be taking Zach Moss ahead of Chase Brown. I think the price is depressed at this point for him. Here's the thing. I'm a Chase Brown guy, so I'm biased. I think he's really talented. I think he's in the right situation. I do not think Zach Moss is very good. I think that Moss throughout his career has never earned any, significant, playing time in all his stops. The only reason why he was playing last year was because Taylor was hurt. So the way I look at it is, Chase Brown, he started off his rookie year with a ankle sprain. So he never got on the field for a while. And then finally, when he did get on the field, limited sample, but he showed you his explosion. So that was enough for me. I like the offense. I like, Mixon's gone. Again, I'm not a believer in Zach Moss, so that's why I'm in on Chase Brown. So I look at it as he's the type of guy that could just run with that job, and then Moss is the guy that's getting short yardage work, which I don't care about. Every backfield pretty much is like a committee these days. So it's not like I think like Zach Moss is not going to play at all, but listen, that preseason game, I know Moss wasn't available, but Travion Williams was available for that game, and he's been kind of considered like a third down, passing down back. And they had Chase Brown in there on passing downs and third downs in that preseason game. So there's a lot of things that I take with a grain of salt in the preseason, but that was one thing that it showed me that they have confidence in him and that they didn't sub him out.
All right. Mm-hmm. Let's real quick before we get into Javonte Williams, I just want to hit one of our questions from our listeners here. Chris Ostro asking, in a similar vein to Cincinnati backfield, would you guys touch on Dallas? Rico, I imagine, will rise soon. Let's just all go through real quick and talk about the Dallas backfield and what we're doing with that. I think that's a good one. Matt, you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, if it's one of the two, it's Rico for me. I'm just not a Zeke guy. I'm not buying in on that. I just think the price where he's going, there's just other backs that I kind of like better. I'm just going to be honest. But if I had to choose between the two, it's going to be Rico.
All right, Chris?
Yeah, I'm with Matt on that one. I've been drafting Rico for the last 2 months. One of those backfields that I didn't understand on the ADP wise. I always saw Rico as the guy over Zeke. Zeke was going 3 rounds ahead of him. Now you've seen in the last 3 weeks, it's evened out. And I take Rico over Zeke on the board, even when they're both still on the board. So it's Rico over Zeke for me.
All right. Nelson?
Yeah, I think it's actually one of those backfields right now because of the uncertainty that's mispriced. Because if you knew Rico was going to get, let's say it was like a 70-30 split, and let's say Zeke was getting some passing down work, maybe some goal line work, but Rico was the main guy, you're telling me you don't want the Dallas Cowboys starting running back? And so I think he actually might be mispriced come week 1. And we're looking at it, where it's like, oh man, he was a gift. So I'm definitely going to have some Rico shares because, again, I want a piece of that backfield, just in case that, they just make him kind of like the guy and Zeke is just kind of a part-timer.
Yeah, I think Nelson nailed it there. This is a very mispriced backfield. Somebody here is going to do well. And, though it's possible that the starting running back isn't even on the team yet. They could make a late trade or something. So, that's in the back of my mind. But, Zeke, you know what you're getting, but Rico is the one with the upside. There are certain builds where I've taken some Zeke just because he gives me kind of a nice, comfy little floor at running back. It's not high. I know there's no ceiling there, but if it's one of those 0 RB teams where I just need somebody who can throw in some points to start with, I think he can make a lot of sense there. And then, Dowdle, I think, is where the juice probably lies, if there is any juice to be had. But, what it comes down to is this, I don't think Dowdle is an extremely talented running back by any means. I think he's just, pretty much just a guy. But that's what it is at running back. It comes down to opportunity. It's not necessarily always talent so much as it is with wide receivers. So I don't worry about the talent quite as much at running back. All right, let's go right into Javonte Williams then. ADP 85, running back 25. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. It was a guy that early on I was taking that I just stopped, and I've gotten back in. And I think the signs are all there. First off, it's a Sean Payton backfield. When he's had a competent quarterback, whether it's been with, the 2 running backs, it doesn't really matter. He usually finishes top 3, top 5. I don't see the wideouts on this team. Troy Franklin looks dead on arrival for his rookie season. Marvin Mims seems like the player that never was. It looks like it's going to be Patrick and Courtney Sutton as their wideouts there. So I think even with my Jaleel McLaughlin love, I'm still willing to take him, at his price or higher. I think he belongs with the 6th round backs of the Stevensons, guys of that ilk, or Swift, because, Peyton, this is year 2 coming off of the surgery. This was a guy a couple of years ago we all loved. We thought he was going to be fantastic. Peyton asked him to lose the weight. He's lost the weight. And from what I've seen, and the Broncos have kind of taken preseason seriously. He's getting that work. It's him and McLaughlin. Estimate will be that, short yardage, maybe a touchdown vulture guy here or there. So I think from, recent trends and everything, I think it's time to get back on the Javonte Williams bus.
All right, Nelson, where are you at?
Yeah, I wasn't interested in him to start the year, but we're getting all the reports that I like to see from a running back, the lost weight. He's now another year removed from the ACL surgery. He was an easy guy to fade for me last year. He was kind of going in this range, I think, last year, and I didn't get it. I don't like guys, especially running backs coming off ACL the first year back. But this year he looks to be, much better shape and everything. So, and Sean Payton offense, I think he's going to be involved in the passing game. McLaughlin's definitely going to be involved, but I definitely am back in on Javonte.
Awesome. All right. And Chris.
Yeah, same way. I didn't think I didn't know if I would be in on Javonte, but he passed the eye test to me these past couple weeks, and all the reports are great. I think that the days of seeing him in the 90s and even 80s are going to be long gone. Someone's going to step into that early to mid 70s range at running back. Everybody's trying to get their RB2 in that range on the board right about now. All the 0 RB drafters, I think they have Javonte circled on their sheets. So I could expect him to rise up about a round and a half. Yeah, I see it as a 2-man backfield the way you guys do with, McLaughlin playing the, that PPR role, that third down back role. but I think Estime and even P. Ryan will take a step backwards, and this will be a two-man backfield with Javonte, the early down guy, getting 15 to 20 touches a game, and McLaughlin coming in on third down and when they're behind. So, I'm in on Javonte. Hopefully his price doesn't rise too much.
Yeah, give me Sean Payton's running back one. It's really almost as simple as that. If you can figure out who it is, and I think everybody else pretty much gave the case. So I'll let that stand on its own. I don't really have much to add other than I'm just I'm filling my bags with Javonte right now. All right, moving on. A couple other quick topics we want to hit. I'm curious for you guys. There's going to be players who go up in ADP between now and the start of the season, either because of an injury or because, they're just kicking butt in practice or whatever the case may be. But I'm curious for each one of us to put out one person who we think is going to rise in ADP from now until kickoff and let us know how far do you think they rise and are you still buying if it happens? So, Nelson, you want to lead us off here?
So my guy is Khalil Shakir, and I think with the Curtis Samuel injury, you're going to see as drafts move forward that Shakir is going to move up. My guess is that you're going to see him. I think there's going to be some wise guys. I'm hoping Chris and you, and Matt and you, Dan, are not like huge Shakir fans. So you guys don't take offense to this.
You'll find out. You'll find out in New York.
We're going to find out. All right, so I'm calling you guys wise guys. I think there's going to be some wise guys that are going to take him like 6th, 7th round. I actually think that he's going to move up that high because people look at it as like, okay, Curtis Samuel is going to miss some time. He's got turf toe. We were trying to figure out who's going to kind of take over at wide receiver there. Keon Coleman, although he has talent, I think you're going to see that he has trouble separating in the NFL, and he's going to struggle a little bit his rookie year. So people are going to move up Shakir, and for good reason as far as that is concerned. I actually think if he moves up too high, I'm going to be out on him because I don't think he's that talented.
All right. Matt, who you got?
Well, originally it would have been Xavier Worthy because I figured back when I first started, drafting, this was going to happen, and it has. Then I could have said Javonte. We basically went over him. For me, it's NFFC specific, but it's Taysom Hill. He should be going as soon as Brock Bowers is off the board. He should be the tight end there. He shouldn't be going in the 14th round. I know Nelson got him there in the 14th. I got him in the 14th of one of the slow mains. It's just him and Kamara both have the same amount of rushes inside the 10, like 30 rushes inside the 10. The guy can catch the ball. The guy can throw the ball. And he's tight end eligible. So, that's the case for him.
I love it. I've been filling my bags with Taysom Hill. So you and I are right there on that one, Matt. And we also may need to start the Xavier Worthy fan club once this podcast is over. We'll figure out who brings the donuts. But my riser, I think Kimani Vidal is one who's going to go up. I think that he, really doesn't have that much in front of him. J.K. Dobbins, nobody doubts the talent. He is an absolutely talented player, but he's just been so unable to stay healthy. So if that continues, and then you've got Gus Edwards, who's also had plenty of health problems of his own, and also just isn't that talented of a guy. I think that, everything's wide open for Vidal. If his price doesn't rise, I'm going to be thrilled, but I think people are going to start catching on to that, and he's going to start getting pushed up. And the really savvy drafters are going to continue to draft him as he's moving up. So I could see him moving up 3 or 4 rounds easily, and I would still be in on him. And Chris, what about you?
Yeah, great calls, all of them guys. Shakir and Taysom Hill, probably my 2 most owned players and selections on draft boards throughout my championship season the last 2 months. So Good call with those guys. I'm going to cheat a little bit on this question. I'm going to say it's everyone involved in the Aiyuk fallout. That's going to be coming up here in the next 2 weeks. So, if Aiyuk goes to Pittsburgh, and I mean, let's get this resolved already, guys, because this is getting ridiculous. It's really going to shake up the first 5 rounds of drafts. I mean, Debo's going to, if Aiyuk goes to Pittsburgh, you're going to see Debo in that mid to early second round. Okay. He's going to be a riser. George Kittle's going to move up 2 to 3 rounds. Okay. Aiyuk is going to fall back a round and a half, and George Pickens is going to fall to the end of the 5th, early 6th round, where no one's going to really want him. He's already fading into the 5th round in drafts because everyone's assuming that Aiyuk gets moved. So I don't know why this isn't being talked about as much from a draft perspective, with Aiyuk holding up the first 5 rounds of drafts, and the way the board is going to completely switch around once this deal either gets done or doesn't get done.
Hey, Chris, being that you brought that point up with San Francisco, saying Aiyuk gets traded and it's for everybody, are we so sure that it's Ricky and not Collins? Like, Collins was a fantastic receiver in Arizona. He was able to, he's competing with one of the guys who's going to probably be the number 1 wide receiver coming out in this year's draft. So, I mean, everybody's got Ricky Pearsall as the guy that's going to benefit the most. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it might be the other guy coming from Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's
I agree with that, Matt. And Ricky Pearsall, he's been out of camp. He's been hurt the whole time. You're a rookie and you miss camp. It's usually a disaster for you, your rookie season. So he's already fallen far behind. I could totally see that happening, Matt. It's a good point.
He's on the Kendre Miller game plan right now, it appears. So.
We got to bring Kendre back to life.
We do, but meanwhile, just take the discount, I guess. No doubt about that. All right, and one final topic before we get everybody out of here. We appreciate all of our viewers and listeners. This has been a fantastic show so far. Arbitrage players; those are one of my favorite plays. Is trying to find players who can give me the performance of somebody drafted much, much earlier. They don't necessarily have to play we're looking for the same position, but they don't have to be the same style of player or anything like that, So if you want to say that, your speed receiver can do the same job as a possession receiver or whatever, that's fine, or vice versa. So I'm curious as to each one of you, who is one of your arbitrage players, a guy that you're drafting later that you think can mimic the production of a specific player early. And we'll start with me on that. One of my favorites, I think, is Brock Purdy in the 10th round versus C.J. Stroud in the 6th round. I mean, really, especially in the NFFC where you get the 6-point TD passes, they're really, to me, kind of the same guy. And they both have great weapons on offense. There's a little bit of concern, of course, with Aiyuk leaving, but I think that they're still going to be able to address that. And if you want to go really, really fun and really silly, you could even say Cousins in the 13th or Stafford in the 16th. I wouldn't be surprised to see them scoring fairly similar to Stroud by the end of the year. But that's saying that I don't think that Stroud is going to throw 50 touchdown passes, because if that happens, all bets are off. But I think, if Stroud throws 40 or less, then we could be looking at these guys being much cheaper alternatives, for, pretty similar production. Matt, what do you got?
For me, it's pretty simple. It's Josh Downs. He's my most owned wide receiver in the double-digit rounds. If you look back to last year before he got injured, him and Pittman were pretty much equal on points per game. Maybe Pittman had a point or a little over a point per game more than Downs, and he was never the same when he came back. It's kind of why I am fading Pittman. If people think, look at this idiot saying before he was going to take this guy over Pittman and stuff like that. Pittman got a 30% target share last year. If Josh Downs is healthy start of the year, he's not getting a 30% target share. Josh Downs and Richardson have a fantastic chemistry. They room together. The GM, everybody's saying you're too low on this guy. This guy was really good with Drake May in North Carolina. To me, he's the poor man's Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. And my advice is buy the injury dip.
Nice. All right. And Nelson, what do you got?
Theo is not going to like this one.
Oh.
Gotta be A-Chain.
Guys, if Nelson isn't here next week, we know why.
I am. I think that, Tony Pollard in the 7th or 8th round is going to at least do the same, if not outdo A-Chain in the 2nd round. So that's my guy. I think that they're both part of a committee. And I think that A-Chain is talented, but Pollard, how soon we forget how talented Pollard is, and the fact that he was being drafted in the early 2nd round, late 1st round last year in drafts. And I think it had a lot to do with why he struggled with Zeke gone, was the fact that he had that tightrope surgery on his ankle. And I think that factored in. And from what I've seen from him so far this preseason, it's a small sample size, but I think that he looks a little more explosive, getting on those off-tackle runs and getting to the corner, where with Dallas last year, he was struggling. So that's my guy that I think they're basically the same. And I don't get the price on A-Chain. You need injuries. And I actually think Jalen Wright is more talented than A-Chain. And so that's why I actually think you need multiple injuries in order for A-Chain to realize his ceiling.
Yeah, Jalen Wright is one of my
Bold
favorite.
take, buddy. Bold take.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and Dan, to your point with CJ Stroud, isn't it crazy the dip that CJ Stroud we've seen with him on draft boards early? 2-3 months ago when draft started happening, Stroud was a 3rd rounder, and everybody was in love with him. And now every week it seems like he drops another round. I've seen him fall into the 8th rounds of drafts. So it's crazy. My 2 players, though, it's going to be a little further down the board, but it's 2 guys that I just couldn't really understand his placing on the board. My guy's Darnell Mooney at ADP 140 overall. And that's compared to a Lions receiver, Jameson Williams, with an ADP of 90. So a 50-pick difference here. We're looking at 2 offenses that are the apple of everyone's eye. Everybody wants to buy in on them. Very similar, both the wide receiver 2, far behind an elite wide receiver 1 and a very good tight end on both teams. We have pocket passers in Goff compared to Kirk Cousins. But yet we have a $13 million a year that the Falcons went out and made sure they got him, gave him a 3-year, $39 million contract, $26 million guaranteed. With no competition behind them on the wide receiver depth chart. You want to say Ray McLeod is a wide receiver 3 on that team? I don't see how Darnell Mooney leaves the field here. And if we love this Falcons offense, why aren't we talking more about Darnell Mooney on the board and how free he is as your wide receiver 6 or 7 at 140th overall? But yet we all go crazy over Jameson Williams in the 8th and 9th round in the same exact position in an offense that we both love. So give me the same player 6 rounds later in Darnell Mooney over Jameson Williams.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to wrap it up. And that's Mooney's been one of my favorite players since his big year in Chicago. And he's never going back to that. But in his role in this offense. And especially, it seems like he's been a team leader a little bit too. Just kind of what the coaches are saying and everything. So those are the kind of players I like to buy in on. So this has been a great episode. I want to thank everybody who tuned in and listened to us. We will be back next week. We're going to have a lot more fun stuff. And as we start getting into the season, then we'll be talking about, waiver wire ads and everything else. But next week, we're going to, again, be talking mostly about the draft, risers, fallers, how our strategy is changing as we really start getting close and we start getting to those money weeks. So thanks everybody for coming in, and we'll be stuffing our bags all this week until we get back to you next week, and then we'll let you know who it was we've been stuffing those bags with. So thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.